If the term had not already existed, we would have to invent the term multi-talented for you. Social justice activist, educator, writer, performer, diversity consultant, leader of Women's March, intersectional plus. Why don't we start with, what did you love about being a kid in Brooklyn?
So I think I must start by saying that my experience in Brooklyn began with the experience of my ancestors, and that everything that I am today is because of 3 generations of Jews of color that lived in Brooklyn and found their place and found their voice. And I think it's super important to begin by noting how I came. I mean, my great-grandmother came up here to Brooklyn with her mother during the time of the Great Migration, when the terrorism in the South, due to white supremacy and racism, actually caused many black people to have to come up to Brooklyn to be able to find a life. And when my great-grandmother came here, she came up with her mother, Elda, who was known to be able to knock down any man with her 2 fists. And she came up, you know, as a 16-year-old trying to raise 2 children, and she did that by working in a Jewish laundromat in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And what she was known for was her love. Even though she had little, everyone in Brooklyn knew you could come to my grandmother's house, get something out of her big pot, and she would feed you, and she would love you, and most important, you would leave her presence with your dignity intact. No matter what you said to her, she would leave you with, and you are still good. Oh, baby, right? And so that thing, that ability to love and to look into another human being and to be able to see their humanity started many generations ago, and it passed down across generations in my family. She raised a son who became the first chairman of the board of Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Corporation. My grandfather, Raphael Bill Tate, was the vice president of UAW AFL-CIO for the tri-state area. He was the first black man to do that. He was the first black man to go into Bed-Stuy and say, your dignity is what means that you need to have a pair of shoes. You need to have health care. You need to be able to support your families. There needs to be a place called the Billie Holiday Theater where people can come and celebrate our culture and our history. And he did that as a black, Jewish, proud man. And so when all of that went down, what happens when a Yavilla McCoy comes and stands on the shoulders of all of that? I had to find my place by saying, no matter what happens to me, no matter what I do in my life, I will always be walking in the shadow of my ancestors. And my mother and father raised me in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, and East Flatbush, and I went to school every day, and there was a big sign over in the front of my Base Rivka classroom that said, Da lifnei mi ata omed, Da lifnei mi at omed, because feminine and bringing the woman into it also was a part of my journey. And I learned that to stand in front of another human being and to recognize their dignity was a part of what I would be doing for the rest of my life. And so I started there in that classroom, recognizing that I am God, that you are God, and as a result, we have to treat each other as if we carry a piece of God inside of ourselves. And it took me into the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, where I did what my grandmother and my great-grandmother and my grandfather and my mother, who is here tonight, taught me, which is to see the dignity of others and to recover the deepest sense of our humanity by making sure that we have equality, by making sure that we have equity, by making sure that everyone has health care, by making sure that there's no school-to-prison pipeline, by making sure that we can all vote, by making sure that we are not massively incarcerated, by making sure that all of these things are part of what we mean when I say, you are mine and I am yours. And I learned that in Brooklyn. So the last thing I want to say about Brooklyn is that in the community that I lived in East Flatbush, there's a woman called Mama Charlie. Now, you may not know what I'm talking about when I say this, but how did she get to be Mama Charlie? Because this was a woman who had mental health issues. She would wander around our Canarsie, East Flatbush neighborhood, and she had 10 dogs. And she would always be running behind these dogs going, Charlie, 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 right? Notice the awe. Charlie, yes? So when I was a little kid, I was 6, I would, what is this woman bedraggled running around the community? How come nobody's like making her stop? And what we learned is that, and what my parents and my neighbors all said is because when she comes down the street, everybody opens their door. And she's able to come in and sit down and eat. And despite how she looks and despite her 10 dogs, people take her in. And so she doesn't have to be in an institution because the community cares for her. Learning that Brooklyn can be a place where people care for each other, where we knew if you did something, somebody was going to tell your mother, where you could stay out till late at night because it was safe, because all you were doing was playing double dutch and hitting handball. Those kind of things are the Brooklyn that I remember. And you can take the girl out of Brooklyn, but you can't take the Brooklyn out the girl. And this girl carries Brooklyn. I carry Brooklyn, and I'm proud of it. I'm so, so proud of it.